All right. Well, hello, everybody, and welcome to tonight's edition of The Great Movies, a discussion of Certified Copy from 2010. And my name is Andy Wolverton, and I'm delighted to be joined once again by my partner in crime, Darnice Jasper. Darnice and I are both librarians in the Anne Arundel County, Maryland Public Library System, which, along with the Library Foundation, sponsors this program. All right, so our next virtual meeting will be on Friday, December the 2nd at 7 p.m. Eastern, when we will welcome special guest Andrew Nettie for a discussion of Wake in Fright from 1971. Now, Andrew is an expert on all films and all kinds of genre films, as well as genre fiction, particularly in Australia, where he lives. In fact, he's going to be joining us not on Friday night, December the 2nd, but on Saturday morning, December the 3rd at about 9 a.m. in the morning. So it's going to be breakfast time for him. It's going to be nighttime for us. Do know that this film, Wake in Fright, contains significant violence, some of it done to animals. So be warned. Sign-ups for that discussion will begin on November the 18th. That will be our final film discussion of 2022, but I've got lots more stuff cooking up for us for 2023. So I'll tell you more about that in the coming weeks. And can you believe it's November, it's Noir-vember, and I didn't pick a film noir for this month? Can you believe it? I can't believe it. Something must be wrong. I do have one in person.
I was surprised when you did that. I thought, oh, okay, maybe he's,
I have not changed my ways.
Maybe there's something about this movie that I don't know, and then it wasn't.
Yeah, well, maybe Humphrey Bogart's going to walk through the middle of the piazza. I don't know. No, but we will do a film noir on the 17th in person. We're going to do Crisscross. So if you live in the area, I would love to see you for that. Burt Lancaster, Yvonne DiCarlo, Dan Duryea, good stuff. Okay, any questions about any of that stuff? All right, let us jump into the discussion of Certified Copy. Now, some of you will remember a couple of years ago, we watched a film called The Wind Will Carry Us, directed by Iranian filmmaker Abbas Kiarostami, who directed tonight's film. And I recently realized that this is our second Iranian film in a row, if you count A Girl Walks Home Alone at Night. So tonight's film, Certified Copy, was Kiarostami's first movie filmed outside of Iran. We don't hear Farsi being spoken, but we do hear French, Italian, and English, and some other languages, as we may say, that we did in the introduction. At this point in his career, Kiarostami had grown tired of all the restrictions placed on filmmakers in his home country in Iran, and he decided that this project would be different. He was going to shoot it somewhere else, and he chose a wonderful location in Italy, which we saw in the film. Now, there are some other things that made Certified Copy a different type of project for Kiarostami. We have an English writer and a French antiques dealer discussing art, life, relationships, and even more. Even far removed from Iran, some of the director's fans were asking, where is the Iranian identity in this film? Yet the film became an art house hit and remains Kiarostami's highest grossing film, probably due to the appearance of Juliette Binoche, who many years before this was already an international star. Now, the story behind this film is maybe as complicated as the film itself. Kiarostami knew Binoche for many, many years before this film started, and he always wanted to work with her. And he claims that she gave him the idea for this film, and that's something we can get into in a little bit, in a few minutes. But both the leads in this film had a very frustrating time with the movie. During the filming, Binoche kept asking Kiarostami, who is this character? Is she crazy? I can't get a handle on who she is. I don't know how to play her. I do not understand her at all. Kiarostami replied, she is Juliette Binoche. That's all I will say. So Binoche eventually discovered the similarities between herself and the character and was convinced that the film began to evolve as Kiarostami watched her reactions while she was making the film, her vulnerabilities, and her sensitivities as she took on the character. Now, it was a much different story with William Schimmel, who was playing James. He has a background in theater and is an opera singer. Now, Schimmel was so confused and frustrated with the script that he complained to Kiarostami often, "I can't do this. I do not know what you want me to do." He couldn't understand it at all. Kiarostami said, quote, "That's when I knew the film would be easier than I expected." Interesting. So the film opens in a rather conventional way. We might even say this is a meet cute. The English scholar James Miller has just published a book challenging the conventional thinking about art by considering the value of copies versus original works. The writer's lecture is interrupted, but interruptions and diversions are almost always a part of Kiarostami's films. The author visits the antique shop of Binoche's character, who I'm going to refer to simply as L, or her. He only has a few hours before he must depart, but Elle wants to show him her shop, but he prefers the outdoors. Soon they're in a nearby town famous for its wedding celebrations. We think we know where this is going, and then something happens and we don't know where it's going. At least I didn't know where it was going the first time I watched it, or even the second time I watched it. I have some ideas and I've done a little research. Maybe you have too. We'll get into our thoughts in just a moment. Kiarostami passed away in 2016 after making over 30 feature films, several short films. He also wrote several nonfiction books, works of poetry, several of which have been translated into English. I am actually looking forward to reading some of these. A very interesting filmmaker, a very interesting man, and we're going to talk more about him and his background in just a few minutes. I have more to say about the film, which I was talking to Darnice about. I had more that I was going to put in my introduction, but I was afraid I was going to give something away. So I'm going to hold off on that for a while, and I want to hear your thoughts on certified copy. Okay, Darnice, who do we have first?
All right, Bill is the first one that wants to jump in. Go for it.
Well, I do appreciate watching a foreign language film where I didn't have to read the subtitles all the time. So that was nice. I thought it was very interesting at the beginning when they get in the car and they're driving and the reflections on the windshield. You were seeing the buildings. You really actually weren't seeing them much of the time. And I've never really seen that in a movie before, that it's always focuses on the actors, and to be able to that to happen. Interesting. I guess I'm not quite sure what the point was. Maybe it was just showing the environment and where they really were. And I don't know, it was different. But the thing that we're probably going to talk about a lot was where the heck the story went. And I couldn't decide at the end whether the director was just playing a game with us, or whether one or the other of them were sick or had some problems, and therefore, she was confused and thought they had been married, or he just had memory issues and didn't remember that they had been married. I don't know. I kind of thought by the end it was probably him, and that he just didn't. His memory wasn't there, and yet, how could you write the book? So, a lot of interesting thought there.
Yeah, a lot of great comments there, Bill. I have an idea about the reflection in the car window. I'm going to save it for now because other people may have ideas as well, and I'm not saying mine is the right one at all. But yeah, great comments. Okay, who's next?
We've got Gary with his hand up.
So I'm really intrigued by this idea, or by what you shared with us, that Juliette Binoche and the English guy just were sort of like, I don't get this. I don't get this. And I don't blame them, because it is very confusing. And I mean, so Andy, you and I had that little Twitter exchange last night, where at that point I was about a little more than halfway through, and I said about 20 minutes into the movie, I had one of those, wait, what just happened? And you know, so there's the first time where she's speaking to the person, I believe it was in a coffee shop, and sort of, you think she's playing that, oh, he's my husband, and just playing a game. And then something happens and you're like, wait, they are married. And then that very enigmatic story about him looking out his window, watching what I believe we're led to believe was her with her son. And that was and she starts crying at that and saying, like, I don't tell me that memory, or I can't have that memory, something to that effect. Really lots of games, lots of what is going on here for real. I'm still mystified by the end. I have a crude interpretation of what might be happening at the end, but part of it is like, you know, that I don't know, that doesn't fit with the sort of artistry of the movie. But boy, a head scratcher and one worth seeing again.
Okay, yeah, great, Gary. Some great comments.
Thank you,
Yeah,
Gary.
the ending. There's. I have some questions about the ending too. Okay.
I saw John's
Okay.
hand up, but I'm gonna put my 2 cents into Gary.
Sure.
I was telling Andy that I watched it twice. The first time I watched it, I said, "What is happening?" out loud several times. Husband saying, "What are you watching? What's the problem?" I was like, "I don't know. It's an inception as a love story in Tuscany, and I can't do this right now." So yeah, definitely. And Bill's comment about him having memory loss puts an entire spin on one theory that I had too. Because I'll be honest, I watched it 2.5 times. I watched it once, I was like, I'm not getting this. I need to watch it again. Watched it again, and I was like, okay, Andy said, don't look at anything until you've watched it. So now I'm going to look at it. And then I went back and started watching some things, just scenes based on what I read, and still at the end came up with, what is happening here? So I'm glad. I know I knew I wasn't alone, but I'm glad to hear that out loud. Okay, sorry, John, go ahead.
Well, I guess like everybody else, I was sort of grasping for some way to make sense of this. What struck me at the beginning, I thought it was very similar to, if anyone's seen Eric Romer's My Night at Maud's, where you have this kind of sexually tense encounter, but the dialogue is, philosophical and speculative. And although there is an opportunity for a more physical encounter, in My Night at Maud's, the protagonist demurs. But it's very high level. I mean, it's Eric Romer, and I thought he was venturing, kind of updating it and intensifying it. Then, for me, it shifted into Alain Resnais territory. It reminded me of Last Year at Marienbad or Je t'aime, where the physical presence of the people sort of becomes unmoored, and you drift into the psychological territory where there's this fantasy, really, that in a very interesting way they collaborate on, and I think that comes out of a need that each one of them has, but is not able to face privately because it's such a painful thing. So, I mean, I enjoyed that. I love Resnais. He's one of my favorite directors. I love Eric Romer. He's also one of my favorite directors. I saw them when I was their work when I was very young, and it impressed me very much. And I still always get a great deal of pleasure whenever I see their films. The other thing I would say, and in contrast to Romer and Resnais, was the high priority placed on the cinematography. I thought this was really excellent cinematography, but in a way it was too excellent, because what it did for me was distract from the, and I don't mean that in a deeply critical way, but what's going on in with these characters is kind of fantastic, but the cinematography has you very rooted in this Italian village with these people passing through, with the customs, the marriage, and so forth. And there's a lot of really interesting lighting effects that go on, especially with the opera singer. I thought that the cinematographer paid a lot more of attention to the light effects on him than he did on her, which I thought was interesting. But and that thing that Bill pointed out about the windshield as they're driving through, I think that was just sort of a tour de force thing. And I mean, it is cinema, and they're certainly allowed to do that. But I thought it kind of interfered, I guess, is one way, with the overall narrative. So those are my reactions. I enjoyed the movie, though. I don't want to sound like I didn't. I enjoyed it very much. I only watched it once. One only has so much time, but I'm definitely inclined to watch it again.
Okay, thanks, John. Some excellent ideas. I want to come back to something that you said about the cinematography and also about the two characters being in a collaboration here. I think you might be onto something there, but more in a minute. Who's next? Oh, I see all kinds of hands up. This is great.
So we got Lisa, Kathy, Chuck. We'll go with those three first. And I saw you, Sue. Yeah, I got you on the list.
All right. Hey, I am so much with what Darnie says about the mirrors and reflections, and I'm also with what John says about collaboration. For me, maybe this is because I'm an outlier, the transition was seamless, because I've been in situations like that where it's just instantaneous improv and it's kind of like a dare, but then it gets serious. It gets serious because we're actually, I think what John said about the collaboration of a therapy in a way. It's like the most 3D in the streets therapy session that there could be. I actually, in a different film group, we watched Certified Copy, and I forgot we watched it with something else. And I'd like to send, if it's okay, if it's legit, I'd send the notes to Andy and he can give it to the group.
Yeah, definitely.
Because this kid in Washington, it's like, anyway. So I love so much the idea of reflection, illusion, what is real, and where does our attention go? When there's oftentimes, like in the beginning, when we're in the audience, but we're really a little more fascinated about what the hell's going on with the son and the mom than what's being said. Plus you get the sense that she's trying to listen. So we're starting to get tense that she can't listen and this kid is interrupting. And there's all of this going on. This occurs again at the wedding, where there's that one woman who sits down and we just see her pretty much from the waist up. And she does not look like your usual radiant bride. She looks very sad. She looks concerned and nervous. And the realism that slips through what is real, right? Let me see if I have anything else. I just wanted to mainly wanted to say that I understood it. I wasn't thrown by it, which makes me an outlier, I guess. But I just thought that they had a short period of time and maybe they were gonna, it was kind of like this game they're playing, and there are many truths in a game, right? I'm gonna leave it there because I see all these hands and I want to hear them. So that's it for me.
Great. All right, so I'm gonna run down the list and then we'll come back to this. So we got Kathy, Chuck, Dee, Sue, Ed, then Martha. Okay. Go ahead, Kathy.
Mine, okay. So
Bill.
I could barely pay attention to it. I thought it moved really haltingly and was hard to pay attention to. I thought the cinematography was kind of unusual, and I don't know if it was the time period, but the camera seemed more like the filming was it appeared like a TV show, and I don't know enough about cinematography to try to explain that, but when I finally finished watching it, and I only watched it once, I started thinking about it. And then I said, that was really an intense, deep art film. It was the guy was emphasizing that copies and art were okay, but she was on to something else. And it seemed like their whole relationship was actually doing art, like life imitates art, art imitates life. And the child knew that she was going to try to fall in love with this guy or get this guy to fall in love with her. At least that's what he said, I think, when she was trying to get him to eat some food. But I found that it was much more layered, and that all of the acting of this pretend relationship was basically an artifice. And it just went a lot deeper than their relationship. It was sort of universal because, for example, when they were trying to have dinner in the restaurant where they couldn't get served, and he started getting grumpy because it was 5 o'clock and he was hungry. And then she started complaining about how he hadn't paid attention to her. And then he said she took too long in the bathroom. I mean, how many people have heard that in their lives? I mean, it was basically just so much deeper than just them, I thought. But, and so actually I thought about it for quite a while after I watched it, but I honestly, when it was over, I was glad it was over. It just seemed to be sort of painful to watch this sort of developing relationship. But I do like movies about art, and I found that it was, you know, I enjoy, so all in all, I thought it was well worth watching.
Awesome, thank you. I see Chuck next.
Yeah, actually, Kathy hit on a couple of things that I was kind of going to talk about as well. As far as like the title of the book, Certified Copy, and what his thesis is, I kind of thought that was kind of a metaphor for the relationships, like the original being like the idealized falling in love with someone in the beginning, or an idealized view of marriage, and the copy of everyone having a different perspective on what the relationship is or should be. And I think we see various couples throughout the movie. That's kind of interesting. Obviously the happy brides on their wedding day, and then also the bride that took the spot in the chair that someone already mentioned, that was kind of, a little bit nervous and doesn't seem like the idealized happy bride on her wedding day. And also the elderly couple in the square. In the beginning, you see him like he's scolding her. You think he's scolding her or yelling at her for something. And it turns out he's talking on the phone. So we kind of perceive something in that relationship that we see from a distance, but it actually is not the case. And they're actually having a pleasant time looking at the site. So I think the director, he makes a lot of good points about relationships that I found interesting in the movie. And like a lot of people, I was confused throughout it, and especially the shift in the cafe scene. And I was confused what the woman whispered in her ear. We never really see what the cafe owner whispers in her ear. But I think there was a lot of interesting points made about relationships and marriage in general, in my opinion.
So. Thanks, Chuck. Okay, so next we have Dee, and then Sue.
I thought that the framing of a lot of the scenes was really interesting. I should start by saying that I spent most of the movie yelling at the characters, shouting at them, run away, stop this. But they didn't, they just kept going. And I did not enjoy watching the film, but I enjoyed then reading reviews afterward and the interesting points that the reviewers made, but not enough to watch the film again. But I really did enjoy the interesting framing. And I was so startled the first time that the two characters, that when they were having a conversation and suddenly one of them was looking straight at us. And it took me a while to catch on. I'm like, wait, why are they talking to me now? And then I realized that that's how he was framing the scene for the conversations. I thought when they were in that square with the sculpture of the woman resting her head on the man's shoulder, we're told that that's what she's doing. I thought that was really interesting that we couldn't see the sculpture. And then finally, they got into a position where we could kind of see most of the sculpture in a mirror. So I thought that was cool. And then at the very end, when they're in that very dark room and the James is thinking or talking, and he's standing in front of a blindingly bright window. And I mean, that's not how you frame a scene. You don't put the person who you're paying attention to where you can't see them. And yet it worked. And I thought that was something about that was such bravado that the filmmaker thought, I'm going to do this and it's still going to work. And it did. So I thought those were some interesting aspects of it. But like I said, I won't be watching it again.
That's valid, Dee.
I'm glad you watched it once, Dee. Thank you.
Okay, Sue. Yep, your turn.
Yeah. Okay. So I agree with Carol. It was painful to watch, and Chuck about the other couples really being counterpoints to something. But I was very unhappy with it for one particular reason, is I love Juliette Binoche. And I could not stand the position she was being placed in with the earrings and that lipstick. It's like, this is so not Juliette. I mean, what? And she may not know what she was doing. I felt her pain. I mean, if she was unhappy, I felt it. I mean, it was like too much for me. It's like, oh my God, Juliette, why are you doing this? And so I was disconcerted. And I know that there are these this could be a marriage that's gone crazy. It could be a lot of things. And this director wants me to think, well, what shall it be? And, I don't think he's giving us a perfect answer. And I began to think, okay, well, I'm just going to have to tell Andy, this was a bummer. But I'm going to complain to all the Juliette Binoche fan clubs in the world. But she's so wonderful. And then I realized there was something more. And if you go back to the concept of certified copy, because it's a very interesting idea that interests me. You can give credit to a copy. You can say what's really original, and you can go on and on in the art world and blah, blah, blah. But the fact is that if I create something, it's an original. If somebody wants to create something like it, it could be a copy, but also it's a forgery. It's a forgery. Everything that you create that you pretend to say is this is a forgery. And it's like all of a sudden I woke up in the middle of the night saying, I think the director's telling us that life's a forgery. Well, not quite, but just that to me, the whole movie was a forgery. And that we're supposed to see this as a marriage, and we're going to have all these interpretations, and maybe there's one, and maybe Andy has the key, but I don't have to spend a lot of time or energy trying to figure out what it is, because I like this idea of it may be original in its own right, but not if you call it a copy. it's an original in its own right. Anyway, I was just involved in that whole thing about the forgery at the National Gallery of the Vermeer, and all the work that they do to figure out what is and isn't. And in that one, a lot of people didn't think it was a real Vermeer. But I'm always fascinated by that in art. So excuse my allergies here, but the more I thought about it, the more I thought everything else in this movie was real, except these two people.
Mm,
Anyway,
All right. Wow.
yeah.
I want Juliet to get her revenge.
I always want Juliet to get her way. Always. All right. Thank
All
you,
right.
Sue.
Okay, so we got Ed and then Bill.
Well, after that, I mean, that's curtain call on that one. See, that was awesome. The thing that jumped out to me, there's several quotes. One was that really jumped out to me was, "It would be stupid to ruin our lives for an ideal." And I thought that was really good. And but the most startling thing to me was the bells. The ringing of the bells seemed to kind of bifurcate the scenes. And so the first time the ringing of the bells was when she was walking away from them talking. And so it's kind of a scene shifter, it seemed to me. Andy, I don't know if your research showed that about the bells. The second time was when she parked the car. So that was the beginning of another scene when they got out of the car. And then the third one was kind of the denouement of the film. So that was just really, I didn't, analyze it enough other than to write that down to talk about it tonight. And so I welcome any comments on that. Thanks.
All right. Thanks, Ed. Some really good comments. Yeah, especially about the bells too.
Yeah. Bill.
So in thinking about this film and trying to rationalize the 2 hours of my life that I lost watching it, I think that the key to the film is actually in the name of the film and in the lecture material and talking about copies. So my rationalization of this whole film is that that when they drove away in the car, that was almost like going to Oz. And the two of them, no wonder the actors were confused, because they started acting. Their characters were acting. The characters were acting roles of their previous relationships. And those actors acting and not really knowing where they were going, because neither one knew the exact circumstances of the other one's relationship, but they were trying to make the copy. They were trying to copy their old relationship with each other. And, no wonder they were confused and we were confused, because they didn't know all the facts about each other's relationship, but they knew enough about them. And there was enough similarities that they were actually able to kind of make it work for a couple of hours. So I think it was all it was all trying to copy something that was abstract to us but real to them. I don't know if that makes any sense.
No, it does. It does. Yeah. Thank you, Bill.
No, definitely. Yeah, definitely. Thank you. Okay, we got Lisa, then Susan, then Gary.
I'm so glad. Oops, sorry. Where the hell am I?
You're good.
Where am I? Okay, here I am. I just can't, it's better that I can't see myself. For some reason, I am so glad that I listened to everybody else's ideas because they were helpful in forming my own and recalibrating. And I had written that down as well too. It is stupid for us to ruin our lives for an ideal. And this hunt for authenticity and original, if you think about it, we're all just copies too, right? You know, we're just, and that who is it? I think it was Sue, who is very much prominent on my screen right now. Hi, Sue. I don't know why, but yay, you. When you said forgery, because forgery has negative connotations to it. It's like, I wanted something original and I got this. But the thing with, let's remember also when she takes him to the museum, they're looking at a copy and the copy became so meaningful to the town, they decided to keep it because that was the closest they were going to get to the real thing, you know? And it's a reflection. So I also started to think, I forgot who was starting to say something. Oh, I think that was Bill about, think about it. We carry around our past relationships with us all the time. You know, you start a new relationship, you got, the older you are, I don't care how much you've processed it, you're bringing emotional baggage with you. And I think possibly this was an opportunity, as Bill said, to just, oh, we're going to click into this and we're going to resolve it this way. I also appreciated, and I think this is my last comment, that I think, and I don't know if this was in this or I just wrote a note to myself, knowing is not as important as we think, because there were many times we didn't know what was going on. I think the most dramatic one is when he does put his hand on her shoulder and then they walk by a tree. So whatever her reaction is, and she's facing the other way, we're never going to know. So there is no knowing, right? You got to let go of that. And I think that's part of the film too. Oh, are they really? Does it matter? They're telling stories. They're working stuff out. Maybe that's my improv background coming back to bite me in the butt. But, and there was something one, oh, I can never remember all my stuff.
So many notes, so many notes.
So many notes. Yeah, just like Amadeus, too many notes. I'll leave it at that.
We can always come back to you.
We can always come back.
Can you? Can you?
Well,
Yeah.
Should you? No, not can you. Should you? Okay.
Well,
All right.
that's a different question.
That's a whole different story. Okay, Susan, you're next, and Gary, and then Andy will jump in.
Well, I guess I was supposed to like it, and I like Juliette Binoche a lot as an actress. But as this conversation has been going on today, which has really been good, it dawned on me that it wasn't that she was being put in a position to act this stupid role. It's that actually she made up this role. And I'm thinking this might be closer to Juliette Binoche really than her acting role. The other thing that dawned on me, the one thing I kept noticing that sort of distracted me throughout this whole movie was she looked so uncomfortable in her clothes. And I think it partly is because, you know, as a 50-something-year-old woman or however old she is, she's wearing this outfit with the underwear showing. And she's like twitching. She's like never quite, you know, she always looks a little off. I mean, you could see it like a 18-year-old with that. And then at the very end, she goes into the bathroom and takes her bra off. And I felt relieved for her because I think that she needed to remove some of her symbolic restraints. You know, I think she took her stockings off too somewhere. But that kind of a thing is not what a male director or even a male screenwriter would write. That would come from a woman. And I think that sort of shows that the actors were doing some improvisation, probably a lot. But I thought the movie was pretty pointless. And I understand I was supposed to, you know, pick up the thing about relationships and being authentic and to yourself. To me, that's a cop-out. Human beings are culturally, you know, driven to that kind of action. I mean, they couple up. I mean, you can't, I mean, it's not something that's unique to European culture or anything else. So, you know, saying that a man's excuse, like the male character's excuse, well, he didn't want to ruin his ideals or something. I don't know what it was. It's just a basic cop out for him wanting out of the relationship.
All right, thanks, Susan. I think you're right about the way Juliette Binoche approaches this role. And as Kiarostami told her when she was trying to figure out the role, he said, "It's you." And I think at a certain point, she understood that this role is hitting close to home, maybe a little too close to home. So I think you're totally right about that. I'm not sure. I think we would have a different view about how James approaches it, which I'll get to in just a moment. But no, I think you're right on target about Binoche and her performance and what she contributed to this film. Yeah, thank you.
Thank you. Okay, Gary, you're next.
Sure. So one observation, it was really interesting, and this was something I was not aware of at the time, when we're getting into this like authenticity, etc. When Juliette Binoche is talking to the other French couple, and she's trying to get the wife to say what the wife said about the statue, and Juliette Binoche ends up saying it, or the husband does, and then the French wife says, "Well, yes, but that's what she said." So it's like, oh, I'm going to quote you for the authentic response to this work of art, but you're really just quoting and agreeing with what I said. So I mean, like, there was this whole sort of, you know, playhouse, funhouse, multi-mirror thing going on. All right, so here is I alluded to it before, sort of potentially crude interpretation of that final shot, which someone referred to, of Professor Grumpy.
I love it.
with the sunny window behind him. I think he's urinating. I think he's standing there going to the bathroom. We hear water. I think he is either urinating because he's about to go leave and walk out, or to go back and have sex with Juliette Binoche.
Or both.
Or both.
Or, knowing him, both. You're right.
Oh, you know, it's funny, Gary, that you say that, because I had that first inkling too, but then I heard like the squeak of a faucet, and then I thought, oh, maybe that was him just standing there lost in the moment, washing his hands, and then when the bells rang, it brought him out of whatever it is. But I actually do like your interpretation better, because it kind of gives a little spin to him. I don't know. It's a little both. I think whatever we say about this film is true. I think that's kind of what we're going with, right? Everyone's interpretation of the mirrors, the statues, the conversations, it all is based on what we bring to the movie and what our expectations are. And the fact that, you know, I have 4 different theories about their relationship, and I believe every one of them. So I think that's the part of this movie, and maybe I'm giving something away, but I think that that's the part of this movie that we have to just agree to disagree, even in our own mind.
Yeah.
That's it. Everybody, good night. Thank you. All right, we've got Andy.
Okay, so I am in total
Andy's
agreement
time
with Darnice. There are so many interpretations of this film. I know how I feel about it somewhat. It's still a work in progress for me. I mean, I could watch this film for the next 20 years and still have a different opinion about it each time. But here's what Kiarostami says about the film in an interview. So listen closely. He's telling us what he's thinking. All right, here's a quote. "We've seen so many copies. The original stops us in our tracks. It takes our breath away. Without the copies, we wouldn't understand the originals. When we fall in love, we see everything as an original. We're the ones pulling the wool over our own eyes. We inflate the value so much and add so many zeros to it that we can't afford it ourselves. And when we can't pay the price, we discount the price. Then we arrive at the truth. The access to the original is out of reach for many of us. Therefore, we should value and appreciate a copy. When we truly understand each other, love comes to an end. We attribute all goodness to a person until we understand them. And when we arrive at the unsatisfying truth, love ends. They weren't what we thought they were."
Wow.
So let that sink in for a bit.
Sorry, I'm laughing out loud at these comments. Wow, who broke his heart?
Well, I'll tell you about that too in just a moment. So it's in some way, in fact, I'll go ahead and tell you about it now because it may inform what you wanted to say about what I just said. So Kiarostami, this is not the first film he has directed about a relationship. He filmed another one in Iran called The Report in 1979. And 1979, of course, was the same year as the Iranian Revolution. And The Report is a film, this is actually an extra on the DVD or the Blu-ray of Certified Copy, and you can watch that. That is a film about the collapse of a marriage based on his own collapsing marriage, which led to a divorce. Now, when the film was shown in Iran, the Iranian government refused to allow it to be shown outside of Iran. So no one had ever seen this until it appeared on this DVD, at least not outside of Iran. So when Kiarostami was asked why he didn't leave the country in the middle of the 1979 revolution, he said, "Because there was a revolution going on in my own home." So there's that. Make of those quotes what you will. I think it's fascinating to look at what he's talking about, the relationship as a copy, as an original. Maybe, so many couples, you've heard it, or maybe it's happened to you in your relationships. You just, sometimes we just think, if we could just start over, if we could just start from scratch. Perhaps that's what the beginning of this film is. And it is, I think Binoche's character is driving this. I think she's the one that really wants to save this relationship. And we can talk about the ending, what James thinks about it as well. But that's a fascinating idea that perhaps they are pretending in the first part of this film to try to recapture the original of their relationship, that now it has gotten to where it is a copy. Maybe it's not even a second generation copy, it's a third generation copy or a fourth generation copy. They've been in this relationship for such a long time. But regardless if that's how we interpret it or not, that's a fascinating way to look at a relationship. So let's hear your thoughts on that.
Okay. We got Lisa and Kathy's hand up. They were up before the moment, but probably informed what you just said. So go ahead, Lisa.
Okay. I love what you just, I love it. I love it. And please put the link in the chat to the article. The only difficulty I have is that when you know the person, then you stop loving them, because there's a disconnect at the end for me. Everything else made sense because part of the thing is letting go of, there will something called personal discovery, personal share. There is always hypocrisy. That means there's always copies. We're always attributing to trying to be something. That's our noble aspiration. Do we always hit the mark? No. So if you don't, that shouldn't be a big surprise. I guess I really just wanted to put out a big thank you to Joan Coots for mentioning last year at Marienbad, because there is a lot. It's a different interpretation. That's so nailed it. It just brought things together for me, because I remember watching that in the Vic Theater in San Francisco, you know, where you have your own couches and bowls of popcorn, and thinking, this is so magnificent that someone is talking and we're seeing on the screen, in the way I got it, someone's talking, but what we're seeing on the screen is what the other person is thinking. And I love that so much, all the different perspectives. Okay, and one last thing, I forgot about that. I got a little obsessed with her she's wearing a dragonfly, and I thought, that's like an upside down cross, right? But then I went off, and then I reeled myself back. That's it from me. Thank you. Thank you.
Lisa, let me address the interview really quickly. I would love to link to it, but the interview was an extra on the DVD. There's an interview, a video interview. I mean, if your library's got the DVD, it's on there. It's not that long. It's about a 19 minutes.
Actually, it's on YouTube, because as you were saying it, I thought that I had watched this before. I think they have some of the clips of that extra from the Criterion Collection on YouTube. So maybe I'll try to find it. And
okay, yeah, if you can find that, that would be. I think everybody would enjoy.
I do remember that.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, you have 4 minutes, Darnice.
Yeah, I can't multitask. Whenever I do, my computer crashes. So it will come later.
We can always send it to you. We got everybody's
email.
Email.
Definitely. I'll email it to you. Sue, go ahead.
One of the things that I thought of when I watched this movie was when I was in France at Giverny. And I may lose my power. I saw some of Monet's paintings, but they had American Impressionists also, and I saw them. And I've seen them before and love them. But all of a sudden, I was so taken by the immense difference between Monet and everybody else. It was like, this is the master. And it's not to put anyone else down. And that's interesting that he referenced that in terms of what is real versus what you think you want to try to be. So I just think that's really great. And Darnice, thanks very much for trying to get that for us. And anyway, I think because now I'm worried I'm going to lose my battery, I no longer can remember a single thing I was going to say. But yeah, that just makes all the sense in the world. And it's a great way to say you can never recapture it. But I agree with Lisa that there's much more to relationships than the first sense of the relationship. So that okay. I think I made it.
You did. Good job.
Thanks,
Andy, your hand is up. And you're muted.
Oh, sorry about that. So I did, sorry about that. I did find the clip of that interview, Lisa and everyone. So I'm putting that in the chat right now.
Perfect, thank you.
All right, and there we go. All right.
Sorry, Kathy, I saw your hand go down and then I saw it go back up again. So I wasn't sure if I missed it. Go ahead.
No worries. I guess I thought that the romance was so off that it couldn't have really been a true romance, but a copy. And so that's where I got into the thing about the deeper art. I thought it was a deliberate deep art movie, but I don't see anybody agreeing with me. So I'm thinking, okay, well, it's then it means more. And everyone else is basically just thinking that it's more of a messed up movie. Am I completely? Or something that just didn't.
You're absolutely entitled to your feelings.
Sure.
Can't they
I
be
just
both?
thought it was much deeper and much more intellectual. I thought they were deliberately doing this and making this whole contrived thing to be like a copy. And and then I thought about deeper meanings about art and And I remember when they went to that museum, and I thought they made a really good point that in many cases, there are no true originals because the picture of that woman in that small town in that museum was a certified copy of an Etruscan painting from Herculaneum.
Hmm.
And so it makes you see that art inspires others and that there are many copies or other works of art that are inspired by others. But as I said, I found it really difficult to watch, but I just have a question for somebody, if anybody knows. I just found that the cinematography wasn't as beautiful as some movies where they have the special, you can see the landscape and the special lighting and stuff like that. I mean, there were a lot of interesting things with the reflections and the lights and things like that. But there was a certain time period when movies were made in that style. And I'm just wondering if it's just a different film or a different camera, or if anybody has any information on that.
I've got a little bit about that because we have to remember too that Kiarostami was a filmmaker in Iran where he didn't have an awful lot of resources and probably didn't have a ton of money. He certainly wasn't going to get any from the government. So this was an opportunity for him to do things that were a little bit more extravagant, perhaps, and maybe that has something to do with the cinematography. One of the things that I ran across, and it's not an original idea with me, but someone was talking about the cinematography earlier. And I think what I read from one critic was that there's so much in the cinematography and it's so beautiful. And part of what Kiarostami could be saying is that there's so much beauty around us that we just don't see. I mean, that's a very simplistic thing, but it's true. I mean, we get caught up in our own lives and our relationships, and there's all this beauty that we don't see. And I think who was talking about the reflections on the car? I don't know if it was John or somebody else, but I think that's an example too of they're talking, they're having this relationship, and all of these things are just whipping by them, as life will do, and you can't stop it. You can't stop the movement of time. So I think all of those things work together, and as Kiarostami is trying to do so many different things with the cinematography, with the reflections, with the mirrors into ourselves. Again, and I think Kathy, that you're right about both of these things. This can be an art film, and it can be a very simple message as well. You could spend, just like a relationship with someone, you could spend a lifetime trying to get to know someone and them getting to know you, and you're always growing through this. But the message is simple: relationships take time, they take effort.
Thank you. Yeah, I agree, Kathy, too. I wanted to just say two things. I don't want to go deep, but she was very focused on authenticity and the need for authenticity. And one of the quotes that she said was, "What matters isn't the work, but how we look at it." So perception was really important to her, but that was towards the end of the movie. So whatever happened, transcribed, if it was the same day, if it was 15 years later, or whatever, that was her idea then. But in the beginning, she was obsessed with his work and his need to define that, a copy is a copy and not the original. And even though it's certified, like, she was very obsessed about creating some authenticity in that moment. And by the end of the movie, it wasn't about the authenticity, it was about how she looked at it and how good it was, how it was. But that's beside the point. One of my theories was that relationship was a copy because he was married and she was the mistress. and she was trying to imagine what it would be like to be married to him, and was obsessed with the weddings and all the things that were happening around her because she wanted to live with the man that she loved. And that whole thing about him saying, my family speaks their language and I speak mine, because he kept that separation between them. And that's why he had to leave at 9 and because he had to get back to the other wife, and she's trying to make, oh, wow, thanks. But that theory was the one that stuck with me throughout the whole thing. And I don't know if, I don't know if the child is his. I don't either. It might be, because I don't know if anybody caught the beginning. This is why you watch it a couple of times. When I went back to look at the conversation between her and her son, and he kept going on about how, hey, how come you didn't put my surname when you asked him to sign the book? You just said Julian. I have a surname. And I was like, oh, wait, is that his kid? Oh, wait, is she the mistress? Wait, no, they're not married. She wants to be married. They've been together for 15 years, but that doesn't mean she's the wife. Oh, what? Oh, wow. Yeah, so that I just wanted to throw that wrench in the theories too. I don't know if that came up in anybody's,
No.
analysis, but that's the final straw that I came up at the end of the movie.
That is fantastic. I'm blown away. That's great.
Thank you. Like I said, this is what happens when you watch it a couple of times, because I was just determined to figure out what is going on here. Gary, I'm sorry, I see your hand up. Go ahead.
No, you've now given me something else to sort of pivot off. So
Okay.
is she in that final moment when she goes up to the 3rd floor, room 9, is she recreating their wedding night, or is she creating the wedding night she never had?
Wow.
And Andy, when you were talking, it made me think about, well, why did he set this in Italy? I mean, there's nothing sort of essential that it has to be there, but I think it speaks to, I mean, with all the beauty flying by, I mean, just in Italy, that is just an essential part of being there in that country. And you had the French couple refer to, oh, well, Italy is just a big outdoor museum. And so there just is that constant presence of beauty, of amazing art that you are driving by, walking by, noticing, ignoring, what have you. And it sort of the ideal place to place a movie where that's what you're wrestling with. But Darnice, I like.
Gotta watch that Darnice. She brings some stuff up. Really good. Yeah, great ideas, Gary.
That to the end. Thanks, Gary. All right, I'm done for tonight.
I think we all may be done for tonight. This is taking its toll on us. All right. Would anybody like the last word before we get into some recommendations? Okay, I think we've said all we can say about Certified Copy. Well, first of all, I thank you for watching this. I know it was a challenging film, sometimes a frustrating film, but boy, the discussion that came from it is just tremendous. So I thank you all. So recommendations. My first one is going to be The Report, which again is on the DVD or the Blu-ray if you happen to have that from the library, or maybe it's in your local library. Again, that's called The Report. Also, my second recommendation, this one is on Canopy. It's called Journey to Italy from 1954, directed by Roberto Rossellini, also known as Voyage to Italy. This stars Ingrid Bergman and George Sanders, who play a childless English couple on vacation in Italy as their marriage is on the verge of collapse. Apparently, Certified Copy owes a lot to this film. Again, that one's on Canopy. And then a more current film that's on Canopy, 45 Years from 2015. A couple played by Charlotte Rampling and Tom Courtenay as they were about to celebrate their 45th wedding anniversary. The husband receives some disturbing news that threatens to ruin the anniversary celebration. Charlotte Rampling has had a long and distinguished career, as has Tom Courtenay, but Courtenay has been far less celebrated. Yet I consider him to be one of the finest actors alive, giving stellar performances in films like Billy Liar, King and Country, Dr. Zhivago, The Dresser, and many more. So those are my recommendations. Let's hear yours.
Lisa?
I meant to mention this earlier because it made me think of it. Who's Afraid of Virginia Woolf?
Oh, yeah.
Because we, what was real, what wasn't, right? And probably Marriage Story, but I think that's on Netflix with Adam Driver, and Shoot the Moon with Albert Finney and Diane Keaton. Oh, and The Upside of Anger, for those of you who would like like it to be a little lighter. Even though the name doesn't sound it. It's got Kevin Costner. It's kind of funny. Okay, that's it for me.
Thank you, Lisa.
Okay, Ed?
Yes, I just discovered this the other day, and you can find it on archive.org for free. Les Miserables, 1935 film. I love Les Miserables. Frederick March plays Jean Valjean, and Charles Lawton plays Javert. So I try to watch anything and listen to anything Les Mis related. So there you go.
All right.
Sounds good.
Thanks,
Okay,
Ed.
Dee?
So first, I wanted to say thank you to whoever recommended Abbott and Costello Meet Frankenstein last time around. Oh, thank you so much. We watched that for Halloween, and it was a delight. Second, I think of this movie as a French film, and so I wanted to recommend another French film, which is Petite Maman. It's another French movie that's deeply mysterious. I think of it almost as magical realism writ small. It's interesting, it's poignant, tender, and a little spooky. And I really enjoyed it. So it's Petite Maman. And I think it's on,
Yes, so.
I think it's only available for streaming on Hulu right now, but it was worth putting up with the craziness that was Hulu to watch it.
Great.
My French is not very good. Can you spell the maman? Petite. I got petite, but not.
Here you go.
Gotcha.
Oh, there we go. Great.
Thank you. Okay, Ed, is your hand still up, or is that from before?
No, sorry, I'll lower
No,
it.
no, it's okay. Just thought maybe you had another one. Okay, John, then Kathy.
Debbie stole one of my recommendations, which was Two for the Road. Another one that I would recommend is The Go-Between, Joseph Losey's. I think it's his best film. Michael Redgrave, Julie Christie. Thematically related. Another film that is not thematically related, which I caught about a week ago, which I think is a really wonderful movie, is John Ford's The Sun Shines Bright. Made it in the 50s. It's not a Western. It's part of the Judge Priest cycle that he did. The original one was with Will Rogers, which was a breakthrough movie for both Ford and Rogers. This one does not have the star cast. And if anyone's seen other John Ford movies, you know that he can really do a lot with actors who are not stars. Wagon Master being one of his really fine movies. But this is really I think, a really charming, and it has some of the elements people might be offended by, his kind of smarmy historicism. But at the end of it, I think it's a really poignant movie, and I recommend it if no one has seen it as well. It's online. I forget where I saw it, but it's easily seen online, and it's a good print too online.
Good. Thanks, John.
Okay, Kathy.
This one is not an old movie, but I did watch it, I believe, on Canopy. It's called The Other Side of the World. And I believe it's a Spanish film, and it's about immigration or related to the movement of peoples. I found it, the plot was pretty good. It moved along, and it was, to me, it was a meaningful film that I enjoyed.
Kathy, is that still on Canopy? Do you know?
I don't know. I did probably watch it at least 3 months ago. Time goes by so fast, I honestly.
I hear you. I'm going to take a quick look here.
Awesome.
Okay, do we have others?
Any others? Bill?
Sure.
Wait,
William
Lisa.
Shakespeare. Oh, sorry. Oh, God.
Bill,
I'm
Bill
sorry.
first, and Lisa.
Well, not so much a recommendation, but last month, I think it was last month, we watched the vampire movie, right?
Mhm.
One of the recommendations out of that was to Let the Right One In.
Mhm.
And I went off and watched that, and it's quite a different kind of vampire movie. It was quite interesting. If people haven't seen it, whole different take on who could be the vampire. So pretty good.
Good.
Oh, awesome.
I'm glad you watched it.
All right, now Lisa.
I'm going to actually combine my double. That's how I saw it, which was Who's Afraid of Virginia Woolf and The Taming of the Shrew with Elizabeth Taylor and Richard Burton. And it's powerful. It's a powerhouse. It's fun. It's an interesting take on that horrible speech at the end that she has to give and why she gives it. And they do it all with glances. So.
Okay, good.
What about Kiss Me Kate? What about that one? I know. Okay, is that all the recommendations?
Is that all the recommendations? Okay, all right. Well, it's again a great discussion. We had plenty to think about, plenty to talk about. And whether you never want to watch Certified Copy again, or if you want to revisit it 5 or 10 years down the road, again, I thank you for watching it and joining us tonight for the discussion. So don't forget, we will see you on December the 2nd for Wake and Fright with our special guest, Andrew Nettie. And until then, I guess I won't see you guys until after Thanksgiving. So have a wonderful Thanksgiving. Be safe if you're traveling. Be safe and have a wonderful time. And we'll see you next time.
And Andy,
Thank you, everybody.
Andy, I'm waiting for the remake of this movie.
The remake
Who's
of
going to
this
be in
movie?
that remake? Who's going to be in that remake, Gary?
Yeah.
Who will be in there?
I don't know.
Okay.
I don't know. Maybe a copy. I don't know.
Oh, maybe Juliette Binoche.
Yeah. Good night, everybody.
Good night.
Good night.